Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Leigh Fuge, and in this video today we're going to look at how to change the pickups in an ES335 style semi-hollow guitar. So the guitar I'm holding here is my Tokai 335 style. I believe the exact model number is an ES-60. I've had this guitar for quite a while and I love the way it plays. But one thing that's always bothered me about it is the pickups just aren't quite clear enough. They're a little bit muddy for my taste. They sound okay, but I definitely think they could sound better. One thing that's always put me off doing this kind of modification to the guitar is the fact that changing the pickups on a 335 style guitar is known as a bit of a pain. But after speaking to my buddy Josh at Righteous Sound Pickups, he suggested a set of his pickups would be great for this guitar. So I thought, why not put this on camera so that you're gonna see me do this for the very first time as well. So before we start taking this apart and seeing what we're gonna be doing to it, here's how it sounds over a track in its current state. Okay, so the guitar is now on the bench in front of me. So before we start taking this apart, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be doing. So this is not 100% stock. As you can see, it's got this trapeze tailpiece, which I added myself. This was originally a stop tail with a standard Tune-o-matic and tailpiece style setup. This switch is also not stock. This is actually a Switchcraft switch that I had added about 2 years ago because the original switch broke. So I'm not actually going to be changing this in the video, but I am going to be changing everything else. So I've got this really cool pre-wired wiring harness from Bloodstone Guitar Works. These guys make really cool vintage correct, pre-done harnesses. Anyone who knows anything about rewiring a 335 style guitar will know it's a bit of a pain. So I thought I would make my life a little bit easier by buying a pre-done harness. This has got some CTS pots on there as well and a Switchcraft jack output, which is great. So this is also going to require a little bit of modification on the guitar because these American style CTS pots are actually 10mm shafts, and this guitar being an import is actually pre-done for 8mm. So we're going to have to widen some of those holes as well. But this is going to make a big difference. But the real treat is these pickups. So my buddy Josh from Righteous Sound very kindly sent me these pickups that he calls the Patent 64. So these are some brand new pickups in his range, which are essentially modeled after some classic 60s style Gibson PAF pickups. So I always wanted a red 335 style because Eric Clapton played one in the 60s, and Clapton is one of my favorite players. In that 60s style 335 he had, which I believe was a 63 or 64, he would have had some original PAFs. So Josh has actually sent me a set of his new PAF style pickups, which are, as he says, pretty much the exact same pickups. So I'm very excited to get these in the guitar. So let's take a quick look at what's in the box. So you've got a little card here telling you about the pickup specs. The Patent 64, the bridge is a 7.9K and the neck is a 7.1, and they're both Alnico 4 magnets. For any of the pickup geeks out there, it actually comes with all the screws you need and a really cool vintage looking capacitor, which I'm not actually going to be using because I've got these orange drops built into the wiring harness, but I'll probably use that for something in the future. Now Josh hand winds all his pickups and they are very, very good quality. So there's actually another video on the channel I did a few months ago where I put a set of his pickups in my Strat. So if you haven't checked that out, there's going to be a card in the top corner. Please go check that video out as well. So the pickups he sent me are these. These are humbucker pickups, and he's done them in this really cool aged nickel casing for me to give it a bit more of a vintage vibe. All the pickups are done by hand, and he does them, let me just get a close-up on that for you. He does them all with this braided wire, so they look absolutely fantastic. So this is going in the guitar. I've actually got the full set here of both humbuckers. He puts them in these little cool sacks as well. A lot of nice little touches when you go with a smaller builder. So there they are. These are my new patent 64 humbuckers. So a big thank you to Josh for making these and sending them out to me. Let's see what they sound like. So there's a few different tools you're going to need for a job like this. So you're going to need a good screwdriver. This is a really good one. This is a Music Nomad one. It's actually changeable between a Phillips and a flathead, which is very useful because I do need both types. You'll need a good set of wire cutters, a good set of pliers. I'm going to be using a string winder just to help me take the strings off. A drill with a widening point so that I can take these 8mm import holes and extend them to the full 10mm that I need. You're going to need some solder and a good soldering iron. And you're also going to need some thread. So you can use any kind of wire or any kind of fabric or whatever you want, any kind of thread, because the reason we need this is because all of these components here have to come out through this F-hole. This is why it's a bit of a nightmare. So I actually have to have this thread to allow me to take those out. So it's going to be a bit fiddly. We're probably going to make a few mistakes along the way, but let's see what happens. So you've heard now how it sounded straight in over the first track. That was the guitar stock through the Blackstar Studio 10 6L6. There's a couple of drive pedals on. I had the Cheritone Centura and the MXR Timmy. So that was how it sounded in its current state. There's going to be some A/B clips later on in the video as well. But now we're going to start stripping this thing down. So I'm going to start just by taking off the pick guard, just because that's going to get in the way. So we'll just set the screws to one side. Whenever you're doing something like this, make sure you have a little pot or somewhere safe to keep the screws, because you don't want to lose anything that's important. At this stage, the pick guard is just going to be getting in the way, so let's get rid of that. Okay, so you want to take off the volume knob covers. You want to get rid of those. These are quite stiff. They've never actually been taken off this guitar, and I just dropped one inside, so I'll have to retrieve that. Take these off and set these to one side as well. And there's the strings off the guitar. So now we can start taking the electronics apart. I did actually forget to mention as well, I'm not getting paid for this video, but Josh at Righteous Sound did very kindly send me the pickups. I did also buy the wiring harness myself as well. Okay, so I've loosened all the bolts now. I'm going to start taking this stuff apart. Now, typically, if you were doing this just to do a small modification, you'd actually be using this string and tying it around the pots so that the string ends up going through the hole, and then when you pull the pots out of the F-hole, you've got the thread coming back this way to allow you to pull them back through. Now, because I'm replacing all of this stuff, I don't actually need to do that. So I'm just going to be loosening these and taking them out. I should also mention, I am really not that great at soldering, so please don't take anything in this too literal. If you try this yourself and you're a bit uncertain, because it is quite a fiddly job, take it to your local luthier and get them to do it, because they will certainly do a better job than I will. But with those new pickups arriving and me never having actually done this before, I thought it would be quite interesting to put the cameras on and try it on camera for the first time. So everything's loosened now except for the switch. So I'm just going to loosen that quickly. That's going to require a different tool. So here's where it gets fiddly, because now we're trying to get everything out of the F-hole. So you've got to do this one component at a time. Obviously, if this was just a modification or I was changing the pickups, for instance, on their own without changing the pots, I would be a little bit more careful and I'd use the string method. But as I said, all of this stuff is coming out and it's all getting changed. So one thing I do need to be very careful about is this thin black wire here that you can see in my hand. This wire has to remain semi-close because I can't lose this. This is actually the main earthing wire for the instrument. This actually runs into the guitar. It's either in the bridge posts here or underneath this custom made plate. There are two additional ones where the old tailpiece used to be. So this wire I do need to keep hold of. So I'm going to desolder this wire very quickly. Also, be very careful when soldering. They are very hot and it's not fun to burn yourself with a soldering iron. I do it way too much for my own liking. So please be careful if you do attempt any soldering on your own. So I'm actually just going to use a bit of blue tack to put this to one side, just so I know where it is, so I can continue getting everything else out. Now I actually need to get the pickups out as well. So let's get the pickup surrounds off and get these humbuckers out. All right, the pickup rings are off, so now I just need to get the pickups out. So those will be soldered in here to the pots, so we will do that in a second. I'm actually going to take a moment as well before we put the new stuff in to clean the guitar, because it's not actually had a good clean in a while, so I think it could do with one. So let's get that switch out and then we can start disassembling everything. Okay, so the switch is unsoldered. Now to unsolder the old pickups. Bridge pickup is the one with the black wire, so let's get that one out first. So there's one out. These are just whatever the stock pickups that Tokai are using are. They're pretty good pickups, but like I said, for me, they're a little bit on the muddy side. The next one is this red wire, which is attached to this pot. So let's get that one unsoldered. And we're away. So there are two pickups that I can use in another project at some point. And there's my old wiring harness. So I'll just keep that to one side as well because I may need it. So my guitar now has no pickups attached or anything. So here is where things could start to go wrong very quickly for me. So I'm going to give it a quick clean first of all, because like I said, I haven't cleaned this guitar in a while. So I'm going to be using the Ernie Ball instrument polish and fretboard conditioner wipes. These are great because each wipe is enough to do an entire guitar. Very useful to save you stockpiling loads of different polishes and things like that. So I'm just going to give this a quick once over. Keep that to one side just in case I need it later on. And now, where's the other one? Fretboard conditioner. This is very important as well in looking after fretboards. You should always condition your fretboards. I haven't actually done this one in quite a while, admittedly, so it's long overdue. Okay, done. So the frets could do with a clean as well, but I'm going to do that another day. I'm just going to leave the wood conditioner soak in now while I plan my next move. So now we need to start putting this together. So I've got a bit of a blank template here now. We've got an empty body with no pickups, no electronics, only an earth wire. So this is quite important in the planning stage. You've got to make sure you know exactly what you want to do. This is where I'm going to be using some of this string now to help me out as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the pickups mounted in the right place. So this one is the neck pickup. Josh writes just inside there. Probably can't see it too clearly on the camera, but he will write just inside there what the pickup is. So let's get the neck pickup in place. Actually, one thing that's very important that I did forget is drilling for these. So like I said earlier, these are actually import spec. So if I measure one of these, it comes up as 8 mil. So this actually needs to be 10 mil for these pots to fit properly. So I'm going to be using my drill and this little widening tip here get a close-up of that. So here goes nothing. Start slow with this, don't over drill, take your time. Okay, so I've got to think outside the box a little bit here. I'm going to be using a sharp drill bit as a Dremel. So again, don't take too much guitar DIY advice from me because I'm obviously winging it right now. Let's test our math and see how wrong we've gotten it. So I'm just going to take these off and set those aside. I actually haven't given you guys a close-up of this yet. The Bloodstone wiring harnesses are fantastic quality. It looks great. He's really put this together very neatly with vintage cloth style wiring. The cloth style wiring is really easy to work with as well. I'm a big fan of using cloth style wiring on these kind of projects just because it's so easy to manipulate. You don't really have to spend too much time shaping the wire. It's just really easy. Anyone who has soldered with cloth style vintage wiring will know exactly what I'm talking about. Obviously, I've dropped something else inside the guitar. Okay, so everything is done. All of those now are slightly widened to accommodate the USA style pots. Not the neatest job, but it'll do. It's fine because it's my guitar. I would never do this to anyone else's guitar other than my own. It's okay to butcher it a little bit if you own it. So those now will fit seamlessly, which is what we want. Perfect. Okay. Now we need to start putting things back together. So I'm just going to put this all roughly in place where it should be. Now I can install the pickups. So we'll start with the neck pickup. So the cool thing about these is just inside there, you can see the letter N. That would signify it's the neck pickup. And the bridge pickup has a B. So let's just get these in place, and then we can start the fun, which is re-soldering. So I need my pickup surrounds. I believe the neck pickup is the slightly shorter one. One other thing Josh does, which is really cool, is makes the pickup style vintage correct, including the base plate. So if you look at this Tokai pickup, what we're talking about is these legs here at the side, the bits that you put the springs and the screws through. These are quite short-legged. On the Righteous Sound pickup, Josh actually makes them with these longer legs. This is actually more accurate compared to the original 60 style PAF pickups. So on a 335 style guitar, there is a channel that goes through the body, and there's a hole here which allows the pickup wires to go into the cavity. There is a hole there, but that, I guess you could probably run the pickup wire that way as well, but I'm just going to run it through this channel just for the sake of being neat. So that's going to come through this end, and we should see that pop out in the bridge pickup cavity. There it is. It's not going through though. There's actually some loose paint flakes in the way. So putting the pickup surround on is one of the fiddliest parts of changing a pickup, because you actually have to try and get the spring to stay in place as you put the screw back through. So this takes a little bit of practice. If you've never done this before, it can take a few attempts. So now I can actually put the pickup surround back on the guitar as well, because actually I don't need to do anything else in that cavity now that the pickup is in place. Okay, time to put in pickup number 2. Okay, the pickups are in. Now, this is where the fun really starts. Now we've got to start soldering it all together. Now this is the whole reason that I went with a pre-wide harness, because this is where the time saving really kicks in. So I've got my wiring diagram, so let's go for it. Okay, so I've identified a slight problem. The way this is set up is that the output jack is actually wired to the bridge tone control, which is fine, but as you can see, that wire is not long enough to get this pot, or this jack I should say, to this hole. So I'm actually going to have to do a little bit of DIY here and extend this with some hookup wire. So maybe just another inch or so will do it. So I'm just going to add some additional wire on. I don't normally like doing this because obviously I bought a pre-wired harness for a reason, but needs must, and we have to get that jack to fit to that hole. So I would say that's going to be enough. That's like 2 inches. That'll be fine. That's all I need. So I'm going to do some stripping now of the wire, and then unfortunately extending the cables, which is something I didn't really want to do today. But this is the thing that happens when you do DIY work on guitars. There's always something that needs to be fixed, especially if you're me and you get it wrong all the time. My apologies to Bloodstone. I'm now in the process of ruining your lovely wiring kit. Sorry about that. So I'm going to actually keep the black cable black. Let me just put that to one side. So I'm going to extend this black cable with this little black bit of wire here. So I'm going to start off by desoldering it from the output jack. That's my first port of call. Okay. So these little additional bits of hookup wire are now going to go on in their place. Really important that when you're working on the wiring on a 335 style guitar, you get it right before you put it back together, because once it's all back inside the guitar, it's a real pain to take it out again. So now I just need to connect these new cables up. So I'm just going to put them together like this, and hook the ends together and just flow some solder over them to create a stable joint. That should work. I hope that works. That should. We'll see. So that should work. Those wires are now extended, so I should be able to get everything now in the correct orientation. Perfect. Okay, now start connecting everything up. So I'm just referencing my wiring diagram over here, so I can see that my bridge pickup and my neck pickup need to be connected to the respective pots. So with this vintage braided wire, the internal part is the part that gets connected to where the marking is. So actually the cool thing about the Bloodstone stuff is he's actually marked the solder points in green, so I know I connect this to there, and then this part here, which is already pre-soldered, is where I put the earth, which is the outside of this. So I peel this back, turn it into a sort of little braid, and solder it on accordingly. So those bits are going to go there. The earth from the body in this case is going to go, that's going to go to my neck pickup, or my neck pickup volume at this point here where my other earth wire starts. So that's going to go there. So let's start by putting the earth in place. Okay, so now let's get the neck pickup wired up. So I'm just going to make my earthing connection here. So all I'm doing really is just unwinding the braid a little bit. You can do this with a sharp screwdriver if you want as well, just to help kind of pull away some of the braids, just to loosen them up. It's basically like a rope of sort of wire in the outside of the case. All I need to do is get that like that, twist it up, and then I've got a good point here. Now you can see that on the overhead camera, hopefully. There's a point here that I can use to solder to my earth, which is this point right there. So this is actually marked in green on this guitar, which is useful. So I just flow that solder, get that earth connection on there. So that's going to be quite hot, so I'm just going to work around that, heats the pot up very quickly. And this part of the cable now needs to be connected right there next to the capacitor. Same thing out on the bridge pickup, so I just want to get some of the outside shielding of the wire together so I can make my earth connection. I'm actually going to give myself a little bit more this time. I did a little bit short on that one. It was enough, but you know, it's always good to have a little extra. Okay, so in theory, all of that now is done. So the final step is wiring up the switch. All right, so fast forward a few days, as I was putting the guitar back together, I realized a few little inconsistencies with the way I'd wired it up. So I did say that there's bound to be some things that go wrong. So I realized pretty quickly that the switch I had wired into the guitar was completely fried. So I've now got a new switch. So what you're seeing here is actually a cheap test switch I put in just so I could, you know, prove my theory. I've gone and bought a new switch now, which I will be fitting to the guitar right now before putting it all back together. I did also have some trouble with my pot to jack input cable, so I'm going to replace that as well. Then we're going to put it back together. So while I was ordering a new switch, I thought I'd order some good quality string as well. I was going to use some thin thread, but I've actually decided to go for some good quality thick string as well. Hopefully that will help put this thing back together nicely. So I have tested it. The sort of test switch works the right way. The pickups come through as you'd expect them to. So by putting this new switch in, we should solve a lot of those problems. So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove this wire here. So even though this is one of the cloth wires that I really like, I'm actually just going to put a single new wire from this pot to the jack, because this one I've tried to extend not too neatly, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And we'll put a new wire in there. So I'm going to be using just some regular black wire. So I'm actually using a little bit more than I need to, mainly just because it's going to be a longer connection because everything's got to go through the F-hole. So I'm just, you know, overestimating how much cable I need here just to be on the safe side. Okay, so I'm actually going to wire the switch up last. I think that might make this a little bit easier. So I'm going to get everything back in where it needs to be using this string, and then we'll solder the switch. I think there should be enough cable off this pot here to get to the switch terminal. Yeah, that's fine. And the connections from the input jack and from the neck pickup pots are plenty long enough. So I'm going to get everything into place first, and then we'll deal with the switch terminal. So as I explained in the first part of the video, this is where it does get a little bit fiddly. So I've got to do this now for all the pots. So I'm going to get a bit of string through the hole for each of these pots. Now we do have to be mindful at this point which order everything is going to go back in through the F-hole in. The reason this is important is I don't want to cross the strings and end up tangled up in some way. So I need to be very mindful about how all this stuff is going to be going into the guitar. So let's try and figure this out. Also with my tape, I'm just going to wrap some around this wire here, just so I know that this is the cable from the input jack, only because it's the same color as the cable from the neck pickup pot. So I know the bridge pickup one because it's a lot shorter, so I definitely want to differentiate so I don't solder the neck pickup pot to the wrong place. I'm also going to tape this in place here, just so that is near where I need it to be. So now I think I will put the bridge pickup pots in first of all. Alright, so let's start threading everything back through. So with the jack input, one thing I find is really useful is to tie a big knot in the string like this. Now this knot has to be big enough so that it cannot pass through the jack input. But we need a little bit of excess cable so I can actually keep this outside of the guitar so I can pull the string back through when I'm done. So let's get this inside, and then I'm going to start to pull it into place. So this is where it gets a little fiddly, because now we want to make sure we're not tangling up with any of the other cables. Then once you've trimmed the excess cable off, you can thread your washer and your bolt over the string, and then just tighten that on, just to prevent that from going back inside. Now you don't have to tighten this all the way up if you don't want to, just enough so that that's obviously not going to slip back inside the guitar when I let the string go. And the reason all that excess string was important is so that now that that's in place, I can simply pull the excess out, and there's the knot that held it in place. So let's just get that out of the guitar now, and we're done. So now I'm just going to make sure that's tight, so it's not going to go anywhere when I'm doing the rest of the pots. Okay, now we can start getting everything else back in. So I'm going to start with the bridge pots, because those are closest to me. Just make sure I'm not tangled anything up here. I think I've tangled this a little bit. So let's just take this wire and move it. All right, so everything's moving into place. So now I'm just going to start getting the bolts on these, just to get everything tight and sort of held in position. All right, so all the pots and the jack are back in place. Now we wire in the new switch. So I'm just going to place the switch there to get my connections going. So I'm going to start with the earth connection. That's going to go on this terminal here at the back. Okay, so on a typical three-way guitar switch, we've got 3 terminals. Well, technically there's 4 terminals. The middle terminal is where you connect the output jack, so that's going to go in those middle 2 terminals there. The neck pickup is going to go to this terminal, and the bridge pickup is going to go to this terminal. So I'm going to start by soldering in the output jack connection. So I'm just going to bend these terminals out the way, just so I can get in there. I want that to go through both these terminals, and we want a nice solid connection. So I'm going to pull back the cable a little bit. Next up, I'll solder on the bridge pickup wire. So I'm just going to hook over the end of the cable slightly, just to get it to the terminal. And flow a bit of solder on that. Let that set. That should be a nice solid joint. It looks pretty good. And then the neck pickup as well will go through that terminal. So I'll actually go inside out on this one, just to free up a little bit of room. I'm actually going to trim that cable a little bit. All right, so now we've got to test this out and make sure all this is correct. So bridge pickup volume down, good. Tone, good, that works. Neck pickup, volume, good, and the tone. and both pickups on together. If I turn the neck off, they both go off. If I turn the bridge off, they both go off. So far, so good. So now let's get that switch reinstalled, and then we're in business. So the switch reinstallation isn't as fussy as some of the other bits because it's actually a little bit closer to where I need to be. So I'm just gonna do this by hand. And one more test, just to prove everything. Bridge pickup, both pickups, neck pickup. I think that's done. So now I'm going to put the guitar back together, restring it, and then we can hear what it sounds like. So now I'm pretty confident I can take the string off the pots. Now that's no longer needed. Time to string it up now, and then we can hear what these new pickups sound like. So unless I cause any serious damage to the guitar while putting a new set of strings on, things should go to plan. So providing no irreparable damage happens in the next couple of minutes as I'm putting these strings on, we should be in for a bit of a treat with some new pickups. All right, so we're all strung up. Now it's time to hear some A/B comparisons with the original pickups. So there you go, guys. We are done. That's a wrap. That was a big project. That was the first time I've ever changed pickups on a semi-hollow style guitar. In fact, it's the first time I've done any maintenance to a semi-hollow style guitar other than putting this tailpiece on, which is a relatively easy job compared to what we just went through. So obviously, as you saw there, I did a lot of that for the first time on camera. It's quite a big task and it can be quite frustrating. There was a lot of things that went wrong in that process, as to be expected because it was my first time doing it. If you are thinking about changing the pickups on your 335 style guitar, but maybe you're not confident enough to try this yourself and maybe make some of the mistakes that I've made, make sure you speak to your local guitar tech and get them to take a look because they have an infinite knowledge when it comes to this kind of thing. So when it comes to the Righteous Sound Pickups Patent 64 set, I have to say I love the way these things sound. It's really opened up the guitar for me. Hopefully you guys heard that in the A/B test you've just heard. Half of those clips were recorded before we did all the work and the other half with the new pickups today. Hopefully you can hear that additional clarity and sparkle that I'm hearing in the room. It's definitely more open sounding, less kind of muddy, less compressed. They're exactly the set of pickups I was hoping they were going to be. So at the start of the video, you heard the original pickups in a mix with the jam track. I'm going to do the same thing with the same jam track now with these new pickups to play out of this video over. But before I do that, I just want to say a big thank you to Josh at Righteous Sound Pickups for making me these incredible pickups. I absolutely love the sound of these. If you haven't checked out Josh, there's some links down below in the description. Go check out Righteous Sound Pickups. He's making some great stuff. I also did a video on the channel not that long ago changing my pickups on my Strat to another set of Josh's pickups, so go check that out as well. And a big special thanks to Ed Purcell from Ed's in the Shed because he is my local sort of guitar luthier, guitar tech guy, and he has been giving me some tech support online while I've been doing this process. So if you're in the South Wales area and you need anything done with your guitars, go hit Ed up. There's a link for him down below in the description as well. And if you're looking for some really cool pre-wired harnesses, the Bloodstone Guitar Works one that I've installed in this is great. It's all American spec CTS pots, really cool, orange drop capacitors, switchcraft jacks and switches, so go check out Bloodstone Guitar Works as well. There's some great companies out there, so please give these guys some love if you're planning on making any upgrades to your 335 or any other guitar for that matter. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the description what you think of the sound of the new pickups versus the old pickups. Have you ever attempted this kind of modification on a semi-hollow yourself? How did it go? Or is it something you're a little bit afraid to try? Let me know, I'd love to hear. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button, and I will see you guys very soon. I'm just gonna jam out now over a track like we did at the start of the video with the brand new pickups. Thanks for watching, guys.